So I've spent the better part of my life getting hurt in unusual and unpopular ways. This came to my attention the other day when I was in the hospital visiting someone, and they indicated to the nurse that I had been in the hospital a lot growing up, and the nurse looked at me in a very concerned way and said, "Oh, I'm sorry, what happened? You know, what's went on with you?" As if I had grown up with some sort of congenital disease or problem, and I said, "No, I'm just incredibly clumsy and I'm a klutz." And it's true. Going back to when I was 12, I was helping my siblings move some rocks, and I got my thumb stuck between two of them and was in a cast for several weeks. I fell off a skateboard, and perhaps most difficult to explain of all was the broken ankle at orchestra practice. I found that trying to explain being at orchestra practice was difficult enough, but the broken ankle just put me over the edge. And by the time I came back a year or two later with a skiing accident and a flying a paper airplane accident, people really just didn't want to hear it anymore. They expected me to be on crutches or in a cast of some sort. Fast forward to my freshman year in college, the end of the year, I'm crossing a crosswalk to the dorm on campus and am struck by a car, in part because I wasn't looking carefully enough. I spent about a week in the intensive care unit up in Boston, and I'm glad to be standing here today. Almost 10 years to the day from when I was hit by a car, I found myself in Ecuador. And while I was in Ecuador, I was dating a young woman from New Jersey, and we had been dating for about a year. And I was pretty excited that she was going to be, did I hear New Jersey ooh somewhere? I was pretty excited that she was going to be coming to visit me in December around Christmas time. And I thought things might be getting a little more serious. But I was glad to see her, that she was going to come. And it might have been about 3 or 4 weeks before she was supposed to arrive, I was waiting for a friend to arrive in my apartment in Ecuador. And he needed me to open up the automatic garage in the apartment, which is kind of on the ground floor. And I'd been in and out of the porch all day, and on this particular occasion, I heard him honk his horn, so I had to go out and open up the garage door with a remote opener so he could park his car inside. On this particular day, he honked, so I ran out there in a hurry to open it up for him, and had forgotten that I had shut the sliding glass door. Now, if you ever saw in a cartoon where someone hits a door and bounces against it, that must have been a door with safety glass, maybe created in a developed nation. If you can imagine someone holding an entire platter of champagne glasses and holding it out the window here and dropping it 2 stories, that was the noise I heard when I ran through the sliding glass door like Wile E. Coyote. I didn't even feel pain when all 4 of my hands and legs fell on top of the shattered glass. I just saw blood everywhere, all over the deck, all over the porch. And there I am sort of crawling into the kitchen with this like trail of blood, calling for my buddy Ryan. "I'm on the 3rd floor. Come on, please. I can't get to the door to open it for you." And meanwhile, he comes in and finds me and brings me to the hospital. I can't tell you how relieved I was about 6 hours later when a woman who looked like my Sicilian grandmother walked in and said she was the surgeon, and said that amongst the injuries to my foot and to my elbow and to my forehead and to my wrist, the most serious was on my left wrist. I had severed 2 tendons in my left wrist, and they needed to be sewn back together, and she was there to do it for me. God bless her. She did an amazing job, and I have use of all 5 of my fingers on my left hand. I'm so grateful for it. But it continues to hurt me to this day, and it continues to be one of those things that's difficult to explain to people, especially when they ask me about the ways in which I've injured myself. As a result of that injury, as you might imagine, I had to come home to the United States to recover and recuperate. While I was home in the United States, my parents invited a friend of theirs over for dinner. And I was sitting across the table talking with this woman, and while sitting there, she said, just a small point. I broke up with the girl with whom I was dating. Shortly after coming home, the accident wound up being more than she could emotionally handle for her. 2 months later, I'm sitting at the dinner table with a friend from my parents, and she says to me, would you like to meet a young woman? 32? Thinking to myself, okay, what do I have to lose? I'm sitting here in my parents' home, recovering from walking through a sliding glass door. If someone's willing to take that, I'll go on a first date. So I say yes, and the two of us go to a Nudie's diner, and we have what can only be described as a conversation that I never wanted to end. It lasted 3 hours, and our second date lasted 7 hours, and there was only conversation the entire time. About a year later, we were walking down the aisle together in her parents' backyard, and it was a magical day. The last 2 years have been what I can only describe as the best 2 years of my life, being married to Sarah. And I would say that while some people consider wedding rings to be something that brings them great source of happiness, I consider the scar on my left hand to be the biggest source of joy in my life. Thank you.